Welcome to this session of New Start for the family. We're now on the R. The R stands for rest. And rest is not just a daily rest. If the benefits of rest could be put into a pill, it would be among the hottest selling supplements on the market. In fact, you could charge just about what you wanted for it and make significant profits by putting rest into a bottle. The problem is, in order to reap the benefits of rest, we must slow down and take the time to rest. And a lot of people are not really wanting to learn about something that they feel like they don't have time for. And so that's why I use the allegory of the Vitamin R, I call it. And vitamin R comes in four kinds. The first, vitamin R1, is daily rest. Is that something we need on a daily basis? Absolutely it is. You'll find out from science, weekly rest is something we also need. Third is recreation. That's also a form of rest. And fourth is reflection. Also a type of rest. And it turns out we need all four of these in order to get adequate vitamin R. The first is vitamin R1. The sleep vitamin is in short supply with many Americans. Average person does best on 7 to 8 hours of sleep per day. How many hours? 7 to 8. 2/3 of American adults sleep between 6 and 9 hours per night. But when you get outside of that range on either side, significant health problems definitely occur. If you don't feel wide awake and energetic throughout your waking hours, you are likely sleeping too little. One of the most common causes for fatigue. Fatigue is one of the 10 most common reasons for visiting a physician. And I've had many patients come to me with their primary question, why am I so tired? And so we have to look at the reasons for this. 3.3 million Americans visit their doctors for insomnia alone every year as the major complaint. They're wanting to sleep, but they can't sleep. As many as 60% of Americans have some problems relating to their sleep habits. So some might be able to go to sleep, but then they wake up too early. They can't get back to sleep. And over half of individuals suffer with significant sleep problems, either induced by themselves or they're not sure why they have it. And thus sleeping pills are flying off of pharmaceutical shelves in record numbers, particularly in people over the age of 65. 5 million people utilize them, at least on an occasional basis. 1.5 million people have been using these drugs for at least a year on a regular basis. And of course, at that point, they're addicted, or at least most of them are. To take charge of your life and health, you need to do what's necessary to not rely on drugs to go to sleep, because that complicates things with a whole other host of health problems that can come in. It turns out that we don't actually have to sleep as much, studies show, if we're handling stress better. Those that cope adequately with stress can actually get by with less sleep and still be healthy. Now, I'm not saying less than 6 hours, but they may be able to actually get by with less than 7 hours and be within that 6 to 7 hour range and still be healthy. If you're emotionally healthy and positive, your body is likely also to sleep more efficiently. So a positive, happy spirit, being emotionally healthy, not letting the stressors get to you, actually will help in regards to sleep efficiency. And then another thing that helps, physical exercise. You'll have more energy during the day, and you'll sleep better at night. Regular exercise helps to decrease our sleep requirements. And you know, I've run across people who actually enjoy sleep more than they do exercise. And I'll ask them, well, you know, how much sleep are you getting? Well, you know, I'm getting somewhere, 8 to 9 hours a night, but I'm not getting any exercise. You know, if we're going to be prioritizing things, it'd be much better to get down to 7 to 8 hours and put an hour of exercise in there. You'd be able to sleep more efficiently. You wouldn't feel like you needed that 9 hours. and you do far better. So some people actually need to cut back on their sleep time and trade it for exercise time, and they would do far better. There are sleep robbers. It turns out the more television you watch, the less time you tend to sleep. In fact, this is well documented in the medical literature. Once television came in, the sleep times of Americans continue to go down. And the more screen time, the more it goes down. The more you use the internet or play video games during home time, the less you sleep. Squeezing too many activities into a finite number of hours per day, even for people that are not utilizing screen time, can also be problematic. But for most Americans, the problem is just too much screen time. And of course, they get on these exciting Facebook conversations, and before they know it, it's midnight, 2 hours past their bedtime, and then they're having problems the next day, and then they want to see the next day what the people said about what they wrote on Facebook, and of course, it continues, and problems develop. There can actually be fatal consequences of being sleep deprived. Most who are shortchanging themselves on this vitamin R feel like they can get by without optimal amounts of this vitamin. Such practices have been shown to slow reaction time and increase the risk of both fatal and non-fatal accidents. Sleep deprivation can clearly have life-threatening consequences. I don't know if you remember the picture of this story, but this was a large-scale disaster, the Exxon Valdez, but also the Chernobyl fiasco, the 3 Mile Island incident, all occurred in early pre-dawn hours. Sleep deprivation was part of it. Vigilance was at a low point. Most of the friendly fire problems in the Persian Gulf War were due to fatigue and sleep deprivation, and so people lost their lives as a result of this. And these short-time sleep problems with nonetheless, long-term consequences are resulting from sleep deprivation. Now, you can sense when you're in trouble. This is when you're in major trouble. When you're driving down the highway, your eyes are wide open, yet your attention lapses and you don't realize what's happening for like a second or so. We call that a microsleep. And that microsleep is going to end up with a macrosleep if you don't do something about it. A lot of young people, they try to fight it. Okay, I'm just going to see if I can prevent that from happening again. And they keep on going, and then it becomes a little more frequent, and pretty soon they end up hitting a tree or a pole and having some serious long-term consequences. So if you're ever in a situation where there's a microsleep occurring, it's time for you to either pull over and get some sleep or take a mile run around your car about 50 times, or do something different. You can't just continue to do that, or you're going to end up in a disaster. Short-term problems with sleep deprivation often grab the headline. Serious problems result from chronically not getting enough sleep. 6 hours of sleep per night is insufficient for many people, sets the stage for problems. Frontal lobe brain damage can occur in sleep-deprived animals, studies have shown. PET scans demonstrate decreased blood flow to the frontal lobe of the brain in chronically sleep-deprived individuals. Now, when I say chronic sleep deprivation, studies show that if you have to be up all night, and as a physician, sometimes this happens to me. I actually have to go into the critical care unit and sometimes be there all night with a critical patient that continues to need my constant input. And the next day, I still have a schedule and have to work that day. But studies show that if I go to bed significantly early, instead of like 9 or 10 o'clock, I might go to bed at 5 or 6 o'clock, you can actually catch up to, maybe not the whole thing, but you can catch up to a large extent by the very next day getting a lot more sleep. And your brain can recover from that. But most individuals don't ever recover. They don't try to necessarily get a lot more sleep the next night. And so they are just under that chronic sleep deprivation, and that's when the frontal lobe goes down significantly. Irritability, belligerence rise, attention spans drop, rapid mood changes and trouble coping with stress result. Withdrawal from group action can even occur, and depression is one of the complications of chronic sleep deprivation. And then it can get so extreme that you can even get into schizophrenic, psychotic type symptoms simply due to prolonged sleep deprivation. Delusions and hallucinations can be extreme consequences of this downward spiral. There are some new studies that also have shown the problems of not getting enough sleep. Losing even 3 hours of sleep on a given night can cut in half the effectiveness of your immune system. And thus, it's more common for you to get the cold, pneumonia, even probably cancer. A number of immune alterations occur with sleep deprivation. Antibody levels decrease. Interleukin-1 and interleukin-2 fails to experience the rise that occurs with deeper stages of sleep. Evidence linking long-term sleep deprivation to diabetes is mounting. 276 people, all under the age of 65, whom initially had normal glucose metabolism were studied. People who got 6 hours of sleep or less at night were 2.78 times more likely to develop insulin resistance or metabolic syndrome. Impaired glucose tolerance is what IGT stands for. Or full-fledged type 2 diabetes during the course of the study, while risk was 2.54 times greater for people sleeping 9 hours or more. So you do more than 9 hours, your insulin resistance is going to worsen, and you're going to end up with metabolic complications that can lead to diabetes and its complications, or less than 6. Chronically short sleep can cause striking change in metabolism and hormone secretion, the researchers note, and it can even contribute to obesity as well, studies have shown. And in regards to the obesity contribution, watch out for sleep apnea. Sleep apnea, one of the clues that you might have it if you're told that you snore, because that's really a blockage of the airway that's occurring. And if you lose weight down to your ideal weight, chances are your snoring will go away and you'll be able to sleep much more soundly, and you'll be a lot more awake and alert in the daytime. The people with sleep apnea are continuing to fall asleep in the daytime because of their sleep apnea at night. They're not getting restorative sleep. And if you fall into this category of falling asleep a lot in the daytime, being overweight, snoring, you probably need a sleep study, and make sure you don't need other things as well. But I would encourage you to watch the rest of the NEWSTART program so you'll know how to adequately lose weight. One of the things that helps in regarding getting restorative sleep, the deeper stages of sleep, you produce a hormone in your body, chemical called melatonin, which protects against free radical damage from certain carcinogens, herbicides, and radiation. It prevents or helps fight tumors. It delays some of the effects of aging, and so you'll even get into premature graying if you are not making enough melatonin. And of course, it enhances the immune system as well. It assists in coping with stress. It increases your ability to experience pleasure in the daytime. It lowers your cholesterol, blood pressure, and risk of heart rhythm problems. A lot of people with these palpitations, just simply by getting enough sleep at night, and the right type of sleep to produce melatonin, they'll actually have those palpitations go away. And it also lowers the risk of osteoporosis. It keeps the bone mineral density there intact. Well, melatonin goes up in response to darkness. And if you fall asleep around 9 o'clock at night, this is how much melatonin you'll produce if you're on a fairly healthy daytime program. Now, being on a fairly healthy daytime program means that you're on a good diet and enough tryptophan to be able to make the melatonin at night, that you've made serotonin in the daytime. But if you, even on a healthy program, if you go to bed at midnight versus 9 o'clock, that curve will start far later, because the lights, the indoor lights that you're awake with, doing homework or other sorts of things, will prevent that melatonin from being produced. So you'll be able to decrease that area under the curve by half by going to bed at midnight versus 9 o'clock. This is why in academics and in business leaders, etc., you see this characteristic of early to bed, early to rise in them. The only group of, quote, successful people in America that aren't early to bed, early to risers are the entertainment industry individuals. And one of the reasons why the entertainment industry is so much connected to depression is due to this effect, where they're not really getting that restorative sleep at night and other complications that result. Well, there are lifestyle factors that will reduce your melatonin peak if you're not coping adequately with stress. Caffeine cuts melatonin production significantly in half or 6 hours. A lot of people try to go to bed with that, quotes, nightcap, the alcohol to help them sleep. It turns out 41% reduction in melatonin with alcohol before bedtime. And one of the reasons why alcohol leads to and increases the risk of a number of cancers because you're not able to get that potent antioxidant. Melatonin, by the way, is 30 times more potent than vitamin E as far as its antioxidant potential. Tobacco also reduces the melatonin peak. In regards to alcohol and sleep, studies are very clear. The more drinks that you have any time of day, not just before bedtime, the greater the risk of breathing problems during sleep. In other words, you'll tend to block off your airway and have more sleep apnea. For every additional drink a man habitually took per day, his risk of sleep-disordered breathing increased by 25%. And so this is why sleep studies across the nation, one of the first recommendations they do, other than lose weight, is quit drinking, because that certainly adds to it. We will also make more melatonin if we're exposed to sunlight in the daytime, because we have to have serotonin to make melatonin. So if you're just in the indoors all day, you're not going to sleep as well at night because you won't have that serotonin to make it into melatonin. Sleeping in complete darkness or near complete darkness, moonlight is about as light as it can get. If it's lighter than that, you'll shut off your melatonin production. So having that darkness there is important. Eating foods rich in melatonin, tryptophan, and vitamin B6 are important. Avoiding that sunlight deficiency, and then restricting food intake in general. Particularly if you restrict food intake in the evening, you make more melatonin at night. And if you fast in the evening, you'll make significantly more melatonin. And that can help in regards to the total antioxidants on board. Well, what are ways in which we can improve our sleep quality in addition to what we've mentioned? Set your body's light clock. Bright light within 10 minutes of awakening, particularly at around 6 o'clock in the morning, is very helpful in being able to get better sleep at night. Daily exercise and a clear conscience will help. Avoid daytime boredom. A lot of people during daytime boredom, they nap off, they go to sleep, and then they're wondering why they can't sleep at night. They start getting their days and nights mixed up. Eliminate drugs that can interfere with sleep. Make healthy dietary choices. And then don't eat for at least 3 hours before going to bed. You'll have far less reflux and make more melatonin that way. And then that clear conscience with adequate stress coping. It can't be overemphasized. If you have relationship issues or if you've wronged someone, take care of that before the evening. Don't let the sun go down on anger, and that will certainly help. Maintain that regular bedtime. Sleep in a cool, dark, comfortable, tidy, and quiet room. All of those things have been shown to help sleep quality. We call it sleep hygiene. Provide fresh air in your sleeping room. Set anxieties and worries aside as you get into bed. Well, the next vitamin R is vitamin R2, the weekly rest. And a number of years ago, the human beings in Europe recognized the importance of the weekly rest, but it took them a while to do so. I don't know if you remember in the French Revolution days, there was a whole push against religion. And you might wonder, why does the 7-day week pulse throughout all of humanity today? Virtually 6 billion people are having that 7-day week in all of these cultures and all of these different languages. And how did that come about, that 7-day week? The French Revolution people thought it was due to religion. And so what they wanted to do, the French were very instrumental in instituting the metric system around the world. And they decided, they haven't done so well in America. Maybe one of the reasons why there's America-French tension is because we still have miles here, instead of kilometers, et cetera. It's very anti-French to have miles. But one of the things that they instituted in the French Revolution was a 10-day week. They allowed churches to open only once out of every 10 days. You could only wear your best clothes once out of every 10 days. And they instituted it by force. It was political and legal, and churches would be punished. You would be punished if you went to church in a 7-day fashion. And what happened? In that French, the reason why they did it is they wanted to be more scientific. By the way, they also changed the hours. They made the hours 10 hours a day and 100 minutes per hour and 100 seconds per minute. And so they put that all there and made that nice metric day and metric week. What happened is the mental institutions filled up to capacity. There was chaos, and all sorts of mental health problems resulted. And it was the mathematician Laplace, the French mathematician, who went to the politicians and say, I'm a mathematician, I know the metric system and I like it, but this has to stop. You have got to stop this 10-day week. And so the French went back to the 7-day week, and order was restored in society, and the mental health institutions were able to start to empty out. Unfortunately, the Russians didn't learn about it with their anti-religious sentiment. They said the problem was it was a 10-day week. We're going to have a 5-day week. And we're going to be more efficient in our work, etc. We'll be working 4 and we'll be off 1. And everyone had a different 5-day week. They said the problem was it was instituted the 10-day week for everyone, so 20% of the population will keep this 5-day week, another 20% that, etc. The same thing happened. Mental health institutions filled up to capacity. Inefficiencies were galore. The gross domestic product went down significantly. And Stalin himself had to institute the 7-day week back again. Well, since that time, there's been a science that has emerged called chronobiology. This is where we take a look over time at your heart rate or your temperature or whatever we're measuring. And what we've noticed by looking at it through computers is that many of these things have a very subtle but very real 7-day rhythm. We not only have a 24-day rhythm, we actually have a 7-day rhythm. 7-day cycle has been found in fluctuations of blood pressure, acid content in the blood, red blood cell numbers. Your heart rate or pulse has a 7-day cycle. Your oral temperature, your female, if you are female breast temperature actually has a 7-day rhythm. Urine chemistry and volume, the ratio between 2 important neurotransmitters, norepinephrine and epinephrine, and the rise and fall of several body chemicals such as the stress-coping hormone, cortisol. Now, we also know the immune system has a 7-day cycle. Weekly rhythms are easy to detect under stress when it's defending itself against a virus, bacterium, or other harmful intruder. For example, cold symptoms, which are really signs of the body defending itself against the cold virus, last about 7 days. Chickenpox symptoms, high fever, and those small spots appear almost exactly 2 weeks after exposure to the illness. Doctors have long observed that response to malaria infection and pneumonia crisis peak at 7 days. A person will tend to have an increase in swelling on the 7th day after surgery, and then the 14th day after surgery. Similarly, a person with a kidney transplant is more likely to reject the organ in 7 days and then 14 days after the surgery. And of course, this can't be explained by things in the solar system. The year is not divisible by 7. The lunar month is not divisible by 7. There's nothing in nature that's divisible by 7, so it raises the question, why does humanity beat on this 7-day rhythm? And it even is more mystifying when you recognize it's not just human beings. This circus septum is in animals, it's actually in face flies, it's in algae, it's in plants. And of course, these creatures don't know the difference between Saturn and Santa Claus, and you can't say it's due to some sort of cultural religious mechanism that was put in there. There seems to be that constant, that design there in regards to 7 days. And the interesting thing about it, there have been studies on those that actually rest 1 day in 7. We call them Sabbath keepers. They put their work aside. They don't do their regular play, their regular work. It's just a day of reflection and recreation and rest. And they do so compulsively to lose income even, significant income as a result of doing this. They'll lose the possibilities as far as education. And the interesting thing about it is studies have shown that Sabbath keepers are actually more highly educated than the general population that doesn't keep the Sabbath. Even though they refuse to make any income on the 7th-day Sabbath, they actually have higher incomes than those in the general population. They have a higher IQ, study shows, than non-Sabbath keepers. Again, that rest, that weekly rest, helps in regards to the health. I know I was giving a presentation in Colorado a couple of months ago on this topic. And one individual afterwards stood up and says, I'm a I'm a Jew, and I have family members that are a Jew, but my other family members, they make more money than I do. They're smarter than I am, and I've never figured it out, but now I have figured it out. I actually am not keeping the Sabbath, and they are. No studies have been done on EQ. And so I would encourage you to take 1 day in 7 off and be regular about it. Just like when it's bedtime, it's best to go to bed, even though you're not completely done. The same can be true with the weekly part. And just keep that 1 day in 7. Vitamin R3 is recreation. Recreation, when we break it up, is recreation. Webster's dictionary defines it as refreshment of strength and spirit after work. Now, what most people think of as in recreation is spelled this way. They don't spell it this way, but this is what they mean. Recreation. W-R-E-C-K. And what that means is instead of being refreshing, they are allowing themselves to be entertained. It's kind of a diversion. What's the difference? The Webster's dictionary defines entertainment as amusement or diversion performed especially by performers. And this is what we have in sporting events. We'll have 50,000 people badly in need of exercise watching 22 people badly in need of rest. There's something wrong with that scenario. And why not, instead of you watching a performer, why don't you yourself go out and get some good recreation and get some good exercise? And entertainment has been shown to fail to rekindle mental energy in particular. So it doesn't really help out with mental energy. And our last vitamin is vitamin R4, reflection. Reflection not only means meditation, but reading and reflecting on great spiritual material. Getting the Word of God out and discussing it. What does it mean? What are those words are? It's actually part of reflection. Prayer is a major part of meditation. It's actually been shown to be helpful. And it's a balanced form of meditation, unlike the Eastern meditation techniques where prayer involves the frontal lobe. And you can actually have the lowest stress levels in the world by participating in prayer. So I would encourage you, get adequate rest in all of its forms. Yes, indeed, it's time for a new start. Thank you.